Hey guys, it's Got Bars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 141st episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it has, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So it's hard to even know where to start with this one, because if you're someone who watched this page early on for the first few dozen videos, you probably heard me name 2000 Supreme Clientele as my number one most wanted record. This really wasn't an exaggeration, because while Milo, or R.A.P. Ferreira as he's known now, currently holds that spot with So the Flies Don't Come, the sophomore album to come from Ghostface Killah held that holy grail spot for a pretty long time. Of course, there's still a number of classic essentials that I haven't managed to get my hands on yet, but there actually has been a lot of progression made on my collection since my first video, considering that when I first started the channel, I was still looking for personal favorites like Soul Food by Goody Mob, Nocturnal by Helta Skelta, Missy Elliott's Supa Dupa Fly, UGK's Riding Dirty, Redman's Muddy Waters, and ODB's second album. There's actually another early 2000s classic I absolutely adore that I just managed to grab around the same time as Supreme Clientele, but we'll get into that with my next video. Unfortunately, even with the plethora of solo Wu-Tang projects in my possession, I'm still not in the position to do a ranking of all the Wu-related solo albums in my collection, since at the time of filming this, I'm still missing two of my favorite Ghostface albums, those being Fish Scale and Ghostini Wizard of Poetry. But in terms of the top solo projects to come from an official member, Supreme Clientele, without a shadow of a doubt, is neck and neck with Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links and Jizza's Liquid Swords for me. I don't know if I could even really pick a favorite between Only Built for Cuban Links and Ghostface Sophomore Effort, considering I couldn't tell you for my life which one I've listened to more, as I've heard both front to back more times than I could count. And while Ghostface's debut may have had more in common with Raekwon's game-changing first album in terms of the execution, I think Supreme Clientele is as close as you can get to Only Built for Cuban Links in overall quality and impact, outside of Enter the 36 Chambers itself, of course. And make no mistake, there's really no remote shortage of dope releases when it comes to solo albums from Wu-Tang Clan members and or affiliates. From Method Man's to Cal to ODB's return to the 36 Chambers. But I think what makes this LP here so special to me is I had been going through Ghost's lengthy discography as a new fan in high school and had already been more than sold by what I'd heard on Iron Man, Cuban Links, and Wu-Tang Forever. So when he blew me out of the water and delivered the most enjoyable listen so far, I was pretty surprised because at that point, I had assumed I was past the bulk of classics now that I'd reached the new millennium and it would be all downhill. But boy was I wrong, because what I witnessed instead was Ghostface in what's arguably his top form as an MC, weaving his densest verses to date over some of the most iconic instrumentals RZA ever laid down, which, as I've mentioned in earlier videos, isn't a very small pile of beats. I feel like it's worth reiterating just because of how insane the production run was, with pretty much every single album I already named in this video being either fully or mostly RZA produced. And these were all in the span of 1994 to 2000. Really, you can start the production run a year earlier, considering that's when the Clan's debut came out. And I'm pretty sure RZA and Prince Paul were working on the instrumentals for 6 Feet Deep, the Gravediggers debut, prior to 1994 as well. It just took that essential album some time to get shopped around and released. He pretty much always gives you half a dozen to a dozen memorable, legendary instrumentals that then get freestyled and ciphered over for the rest of time, but RZA really outdid himself with the beat selection on this one in my opinion. A great example is on the classic track 1, where Ghost incorporates the sample material into the outro of the song, crafting these slick lines that leave a space for the chopped up sample to fill in a pretty creative way. Both RZA and Ghostface Killah just seem to be on creative heroin for the conception of these songs, which some attribute to the fact that they traveled to Africa prior to making Supreme Clientele, where they lived in a mud hut for some period of time and had a life-changing experience after meeting a bush doctor. To me, this is kind of Wu-Tang's version of what the Beatles did prior to the release of Magical Mystery Tour, and it's usually the event that people point to as the reason for Ghost's lyrics getting more abstract and borderline nonsensical at points on his sophomore album here. The prime example being the song Nutmeg, where Ghostface himself has admitted that some of the verses were a bit random and abstract, which funnily enough reminds me of a song off of Magical Mystery Tour, I Am the Walrus, where famously the lyrics also mean nothing. The thing is, for me, and I think a lot of people, this style totally works because not only does it fit Ghost with his persona and demeanor, but the verses are always vivid and interesting, and at the end of the day, that's what really matters to me at least. It's also only really on key moments that you get that side of Ghostface. As the bulk of the runtime, he's spitting bars that don't just make sense, they're incredibly dense. A great example is his opening verse on the track Ghostini, where he comes in with what I personally think is a top 5 verse of his period. Spitting, yo, summertime holding the nine, split the Vega in half, Jeeps rumble and my dogs puff grass, banks stoppin', hide your rocks hydraulic, the kid with the most knowledge will obtain to touch top dollars. Hold me down, hand me my cake, dusty bake, activate, fuck your corny debates, I'm like cake, or maybe like $10,000 rabbits, the kid walked through, switch up his accent, now I'm from Paris. Cash the bill, frozen elements in gold, signs from the Most High, causes me to break the mold. How the fuck was y'all dudes thinking? You think I fell off the ledge? The legendary Ghostini might be dead? Never. Impossible. Pull out black burners like tonsils, two gallants, hittin' if we got to. Bustin' at y'all rappers daily, wall to wall Hawkins, sucking your teeth 'cause God chain talking like Ghostface this, Ghostface that, Ghost sold crack, now his revelations spoken through rap. He has so many killer verses full of quotable lines on here, but he isn't near the only one, as one of the guaranteed benefits of virtually any Wu-Tang solo project is having a lot of dope guest appearances. You get a couple of top-tier posse cuts, one being Buck 50, with Capadonna as well as both Meth and Redman. And then on the fittingly titled Wu Banga 101, we get another fire Capadonna verse, on top of bars from Jizza, Masta Killa, and Raekwon the Chef. While that would have already been more than enough in terms of featured MCs, the rest of Supreme Clientele includes more guest appearances from the likes of Superb, You God, 60-Second Assassin, and of course the RZA himself. While Bobby Digital was definitely the brain behind the sound of this LP, he did enlist a small selection of proteges and contemporaries to contribute the odd instrumental here and there, including names like Mathematics, Wu-Tang's resident in-house DJ, who actually also designed the iconic logo, as well as Black Mozart, Carlos Brody, Hassan, the Blacksmiths, Chew the Specialist, Inspector Deck, and Juju of the Beatnuts. There are so many infamous moments on this thing, I've yet to even mention the most famous and well-known song to come off this project, which without a doubt has to be Mighty Healthy, which I personally would have to put in the near impossible conversation of the top 5 beats that RZA's ever produced. As even amongst all the other stellar cuts here, the instrumental he cooked up is just flawless, and it couldn't do a more adequate job of setting Ghost up to deliver one of his most memorable and instantly recognizable verses to date. Both hands crusty, chillin' with my man Rusty, Purple Tape Ray co-host, etc. Even the skits on here just knock it out of the park with one of my favorite album intros to come in the 90s or 2000s, in hilarious skits like Woodrow the Basshead to help break up the pace. This is one of those classics where it's so hard to narrow down my 3 favorite picks, to the point that they're almost interchangeable with the honorable mentions, since they pretty much all sit on the highest possible pedestal for me. But if I had to name the 3 songs that I've listened to the most on here, they'd most likely be Ghostini, Mighty Healthy, and Buck 50. For honorable mentions, as much as I'd like to just name every track, I'd have to trim it down to 1, Wu Banga 101, Nutmeg, Apollo Kids, The Grain, Malcolm, Stay True, Stroke of Death, and Cherchez La Ghost. Thank you for watching my 141st video. As I mentioned towards the beginning, next we have another album that I pretty much couldn't feasibly love more than I already do. So check in for that one, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs off this masterpiece from one of the best to ever do it are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.